The morning sun rose over the green fields of Kepler 442b, casting long shadows across the peaceful farming settlement. The Verdani people moved slowly through their daily tasks, their tall, thin bodies swaying gently as they tended to their crops. Their planet was known throughout the galaxy as one of the most beautiful worlds ever discovered. Rolling hills covered in silver grass stretched to the horizon, and crystal-clear rivers wound between groves of purple-leafed trees. Elder Nithara stood on the observation deck of the settlement's main building, watching her people work in the fields below. The Verdani had lived this way for thousands of years. They grew their food, shared their knowledge, and harmed no living thing. War was a concept they had read about but never experienced. Their technology focused on growing things and healing things, never destroying them. The first sign of trouble came from the sky. A young Verdani named Kelmos was checking the water levels in the eastern fields when he saw the dark shapes descending through the clouds. At first, he thought they might be cargo ships bringing supplies from the trading station. But these ships moved wrong. They came down too fast and in formation like a hunting pack. Kelmos ran toward the settlement, his long legs carrying him quickly across the soft ground. By the time he reached the main building, alarms were already sounding. The Verdani had basic scanning equipment, and what it showed made Elder Nithara's heart skip beats. 15 ships hung in their atmosphere. These were not cargo vessels or peaceful traders. The ships were dark and angular, covered in weapon ports and armored plating. Worse still, their energy signatures matched ships in the Galactic Criminal Database. These were Zephyrian corsairs. The communication system crackled to life with a harsh, grating voice. "Attention, dirt farmers. This is Raid Commander Vexthor of the Zephyrian Corsairs. Your world now belongs to us. Prepare for immediate surrender and processing." Elder Nithara activated the response channel with shaking hands. "This is Elder Nithara of the Verdani settlement. We are a peaceful people. We have no weapons and no military." Surely there has been some mistake. Harsh laughter came through the speakers. "No mistake, Plant Eater. Your world has good soil and clean water. Your people will make excellent slaves for the mining colonies. Resist and die quickly. Surrender and live a bit longer." The first Corsair ship landed in the center of the settlement 20 minutes later. Armored figures poured out, their weapons already drawn. The Verdani people gathered in small groups, not knowing what to do. They had emergency plans for natural disasters and crop failures, but nothing for this. The Corsairs were reptilian creatures with thick scales and sharp teeth. They wore heavy combat armor and carried energy weapons that could cut through stone. Their leader, a massive figure with scars covering his face, stepped forward. "I am War Captain Kreshinal. You will gather all your people in the main square. Anyone who runs will be shot. Anyone who hides will be hunted down and shot. You have 1 hour." Elder Nithara tried to speak, but the war captain struck her across the face with a metal gauntlet. She fell to the ground, green blood flowing from her broken nose. Several young Verdani moved to help her, but stopped when the Corsairs raised their weapons. "No talking unless asked," Kreshinal growled. "You are property now. Property does not speak." As the Verdani were herded into the square, more Corsair ships landed around the settlement. Soldiers spread out to search every building and scan for any hidden technology. They found the settlement's small communication array and began setting up their own equipment. In the main square, over 300 Verdani sat in frightened silence. Children clung to their parents while the adults tried to remain calm. They had never seen violence like this. The concept of beings who hurt others for profit was almost impossible for them to understand. War Captain Kreshinal stood before them and began to speak. "Your planet will be strip-mined for its minerals. Your people will work in the deep mines until you die. The strong ones might live 5 years. The weak ones will be lucky to see 5 months." He gestured to his soldiers. "Begin the processing. Tag them by size and strength. The small ones go to the asteroid mines. The larger ones can work the deep shafts on Terminus 7. That was when Elder Nithara made her decision. While the Corsairs were busy organizing their prisoners, she managed to reach the small emergency transmitter hidden in her robes. The device was meant for medical emergencies or natural disasters, but this qualified as an emergency. She activated the distress beacon with trembling fingers. The message was simple and desperate. "This is Elder Nithara of the Verdani settlement on Kepler 442b. We are under attack by Zephyrian Corsairs. 300 civilians face enslavement or death. We have no military capability. Please, someone help us." The message broadcast on all emergency frequencies, reaching every listening post within 50 light years. Most worlds would forward it to the Galactic Cooperative Council, where it would be filed and discussed and debated. Help might come in weeks or months, if at all. But one listening post was different from the others. Commander Sarah Chen was finishing her night shift at Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station when the distress call came through. She had been tracking routine cargo movements and updating navigation charts, boring work that kept her busy during the quiet hours. The desperate message from Kepler 442b cut through the routine like a knife. Sarah played the message 3 times, her face growing darker with each repetition. She had read the reports about the Zephyrian Corsairs. They were slavers and murderers who preyed on peaceful worlds. The Verdani had no chance against them. She forwarded the message to Earth Defense Command and marked it as Priority 1. Then she did something that was not strictly within her authority. She opened a direct channel to Admiral Marcus Kane's personal communication line. Admiral Kane was in his office reviewing fleet deployment schedules when Sarah's call came through. He listened to the distress message without interruption, his weathered face showing no emotion. When it finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "How many Corsair ships?" he asked. 15 confirmed, sir. Standard rating fleet configuration. The Verdani have no military capability and no weapons. Kane leaned back in his chair. Through his office window, he could see the lights of Luna Base and the massive shipyards beyond. Dozens of ships floated in the construction bays, including some of the most powerful vessels ever built. "Sir," Sarah's voice came through the speaker, "the Galactic Council will probably send a patrol squadron in 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month." Kane stood up and walked to his window. In the distance, he could see the UES Retribution hanging in its maintenance dock. The Dreadnought was 5 kilometers of advanced weaponry and armor, built to fight wars between star-spanning civilizations. Some people called it overkill for the peaceful galaxy they actually lived in. "Commander Chen," Kane said quietly, "patch me through to Captain Vasquez on the Retribution, and get me a direct line to Fleet Command." "Sir, are you thinking of sending a ship?" Kane smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. "Commander, when someone sends a distress call asking for help against slavers, we don't send them a memo. We send them a solution." 20 minutes later, the UES Retribution began powering up its massive engines. The largest warship in human space was going to answer a distress call from a planet most humans had never heard of, to save people they had never met, because that was what humans did. Admiral Marcus Kane stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching the massive holographic display that showed ship positions throughout human space. Red dots marked the locations of every vessel in the Earth Defense Fleet, from small patrol boats to massive battleships. The largest dot of all was the U.S. Retribution, currently docked at Luna Station for routine maintenance. Admiral, Captain Elena Vasquez appeared on the main communication screen. Behind her, Kane could see the bridge of the Retribution bustling with activity. "We received your orders. The ship will be ready to depart in 4 hours. Kane nodded. "What's our current status, Captain?" "Main engines are online and testing green. Weapon systems are fully operational. We're loading the last of our Marine contingent now. Colonel Rodriguez says his boys are excited about the mission." "Good, what about supplies?" Vasquez consulted a data pad. "We're carrying enough provisions for 6 months of operations. Medical bay is fully stocked. We also have 3 cargo holds full of emergency supplies, food, water purification systems, basic medical equipment, and temporary shelters." Kane raised an eyebrow. "Emergency supplies?" "This is a combat mission, Captain." "Yes, sir, but the reports on the Verdani suggest they're a peaceful agricultural people. After we deal with the pirates, they'll need help rebuilding. I took the liberty of loading supplies we might need for humanitarian operations." The Admiral smiled. This was why he had chosen Vasquez to command the Retribution. She thought beyond just the immediate military objective. "Approved, Captain. Anything else?" "Sir, I have to ask. Are we really sending a 5-kilometer dreadnought to deal with 15 pirate ships? It seems like we're using a sledgehammer to crack a nut." Kane's expression hardened. "Captain, when innocent people call for help, we don't send them the minimum force required. We send them the maximum force available. The Zephyrian Corsairs need to understand that attacking peaceful worlds has consequences." Before Vasquez could respond, another communication came through. The holographic display flickered and was replaced by the image of Ambassador Veltar of the Centauri Union. The alien's blue skin was flushed darker with agitation, and his forearms gestured frantically. Admiral Kane, I must protest this action in the strongest possible terms. The Galactic Cooperative Council has not authorized any military intervention in the Kepler 442 situation. Kane's face remained expressionless. Ambassador, the last time I checked, Earth was not a member of the Galactic Cooperative Council. We make our own decisions about when and how to help people. But Admiral, you're talking about sending a Dreadnought, a ship designed to fight interstellar wars. This is a simple piracy matter that can be resolved through diplomatic channels. Diplomatic channels with slavers? Kane's voice was cold. Ambassador, how many diplomatic meetings have successfully convinced the Corsairs to stop kidnapping and enslaving innocent people? Veltar's translator struggled with the harsh tones in Kane's voice. That is not the point. The use of such overwhelming force sets a dangerous precedent. What message does this send to other species? Kane leaned forward toward the camera. It sends a very clear message, Ambassador. It says that when you threaten innocent people, humanity will come for you with everything we have. The ambassador's color shifted to an even deeper blue. Admiral, please reconsider. A single patrol squadron would be more than sufficient to drive off the pirates. Sending a dreadnought could destabilize the entire sector. The pirates destabilized the sector when they started enslaving people. Kane replied. We're just fixing the problem. Another voice cut into the conversation. Admiral Chen Wei of the Asiatic Defense Fleet appeared on a secondary screen. Marcus, I've been monitoring this situation. I agree with your assessment, but I have to point out the political implications. Kane turned to face his colleague. What political implications, Chen? The other species are going to see this as human aggression. They're already nervous about our military capabilities. If we deploy the retribution against a handful of pirates, they'll think we're looking for excuses to show off our weapons. Kane was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he shook his head. Chen, I understand their concerns, but I don't care. 300 innocent people are about to be enslaved or killed. Politics can wait. Admiral Wei nodded slowly. I agree. But you should know that the hegemony of worlds is already calling for an emergency session to discuss human military overreach. Let them talk, Kane said. While they're having meetings, we'll be saving lives. Ambassador Veltar tried one more time. Admiral Kane, surely you can see that such a massive show of force is unnecessary. The Corsairs are using outdated ships and equipment. A modern frigate could handle them easily. Kane turned back to the ambassador's image. You're right, Ambassador. A single frigate could probably defeat the Corsair ships. But what about the next time? And the time after that? The Corsairs have been operating for decades because everyone sends just enough force to drive them away. They retreat, wait a few months, then come back. He gestured to the holographic display, which now showed the planned route to Kepler 442b. We're not just driving them away, Ambassador. We're ending them. Permanently. Captain Vasquez spoke up from her screen. Admiral, we're ready for departure. All systems green, Kane nodded. Take us out, Captain. Maximum speed to Kepler 442b. As the communication ended, Ambassador Veltar made one final attempt. Admiral, I beg you to reconsider. The galaxy is not ready for human warfare. Kane looked at the alien diplomat for a long moment. Ambassador, the galaxy has been ready for human warfare since the first time someone decided to prey on the innocent. They just didn't know it yet. The communication cut out, leaving Kane alone with the holographic display. On the screen, the massive red dot representing the retribution began to move away from Luna Station. The ship's engines, each one larger than most alien vessels, pushed the dreadnought toward the edge of the solar system. Kane activated his personal communication device and connected to Earth's president. Madam President, this is Admiral Kane. Operation Guardian Angel is underway. President Martinez appeared on his personal screen. Admiral, I've been getting calls from alien ambassadors all morning. They're saying we're overreacting. With respect, Madam President, they're wrong. The Corsairs aren't just pirates. They're a plague that's been terrorizing peaceful worlds for decades. Every time someone drives them off with minimal force, they just come back stronger. The President nodded. I agree, Admiral. The Cabinet discussed this an hour ago. You have our full support. End this problem permanently. As the Retribution reached the edge of the solar system and engaged its hyperdrive, Kane received one more communication. This one came from the Galactic Cooperative Council directly. This is Director Zalthek of the Galactic Cooperative Council. We are ordering all human vessels to maintain their current positions and avoid any intervention in the Kepler 442 situation. This matter will be resolved through proper diplomatic channels. Kane looked at the message for exactly 3 seconds before deleting it. Then he opened a channel to the Retribution. Captain Vasquez, are we on schedule? Yes, sir. Estimated arrival at Kepler 442b in 18 hours. Good. And Captain? Yes, sir. Kane smiled grimly. When we get there, make sure our arrival is noticeable. The Retribution disappeared into hyperspace, carrying 5,000 crew members and enough firepower to level a planet. Behind it, the galaxy's diplomatic community scrambled to deal with the reality that humanity didn't ask permission before helping people. They were about to learn that humans didn't do anything small, especially when innocent lives were at stake. The space around Kepler 442b had been quiet for billions of years before the Zephyrian Corsairs arrived. Now it buzzed with hostile activity as 15 warships hung in orbit around the peaceful world. The largest ship, the Bloodfang, served as the flagship for Warlord Caxanth, supreme commander of this particular raiding fleet. Caxanth stood on his bridge, his scarred reptilian face twisted into what passed for a smile among his species. Below on the planet's surface, his ground forces were already sorting the captured Verdani into work groups. The strong ones would be shipped to the deep mines of Terminus 7. The weak ones would work the asteroid processing stations until they died. Status report. Caxanth growled to his tactical officer. Sir, ground teams report full control of the settlement. 287 prisoners secured and processed. No resistance encountered. Caxanth laughed, a harsh sound like metal scraping against stone. Of course, no resistance. These plant eaters have never seen real violence. Load the first transport and prepare to move to the mining stations. Lieutenant Veshikar, the ship's sensor operator, looked up from his console with a puzzled expression. Sir, I'm detecting some unusual readings at the edge of the system. What kind of readings? Hyperspace distortion, sir. Something large is about to drop out of jump space. Caxanth moved to the sensor display. His species had been raiding peaceful worlds for centuries, and they knew the patterns. Usually, if help came at all, it was a single patrol ship or maybe a small squadron. Probably a Galactic Council patrol boat. Maybe 2 ships at most. The hyperspace distortion grew stronger, causing interference patterns to dance across every screen on the bridge. Veshkar adjusted his instruments, trying to get a clear reading. Sir, this signature is much larger than a patrol boat. I'm reading displacement equivalent to a capital ship. Impossible, Caxanth snarled. No one sends capital ships to deal with simple raids. Check your instruments. But before Veshkar could respond, space itself seemed to tear open at the edge of the system. A massive shape emerged from the swirling portal of hyperspace, its hull gleaming with reflected starlight. The UES Retribution dropped into normal space with the grace of a predator and the presence of a mountain. Every sensor on every Corsair ship screamed warnings at the same time. The approaching vessel was enormous beyond anything in their experience. At 5 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide, it dwarfed their entire fleet combined. Weapon ports covered its hull like the scales of some metal dragon, and its engines glowed with barely contained power. Caxanth stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. His 15 ships, which had seemed so powerful against defenseless farmers, suddenly looked like toys scattered around a sleeping giant. What is that thing? Veshkar whispered. Before anyone could answer, the communication system crackled to life. A human voice, speaking in perfectly clear galactic standard, filled the bridge. Zephyrian vessels, this is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earthship Retribution. You are ordered to immediately withdraw from this system and release all prisoners. You have exactly 5 minutes to comply. Caxanth's shock quickly turned to rage. He had not built his reputation by backing down from threats even from ships 3 times the size of his flagship. Human vessel, this is Warlord Caxanth of the Zephyrian Corsairs. This system is under our control. Leave now or face the consequences. There was a pause before the human captain responded. When she spoke again, her voice was colder than deep space. Warlord, I don't think you understand your situation. Scan our ship. Take a good look at what you're facing. Veshkar's claws moved frantically over his sensor controls. The readings that came back made him step away from his console in fear. Sir, that ship has more firepower than our entire fleet. Its main guns are larger than our whole ship. And, sir, I'm reading thousands of life signs aboard. That's not just a warship. It's a floating military base. Caxanth felt a cold knot form in his stomach, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. Bluff. No species commits that much force to save a bunch of farmers. Human captain, you're outnumbered 15-1. Even with a bigger ship, those odds will overwhelm you. Captain Vasquez's laughter came through the speakers, and it was not a pleasant sound. Warlord, let me demonstrate how wrong you are. Watch your screens. On the main tactical display, 3 small dots broke away from the human dreadnought. They moved impossibly fast, accelerating at rates that should have crushed any crew inside. These were point defense drones, automated systems designed to shoot down incoming missiles and fighters. Caxanth watched in growing horror as the 3 dots approached his scout ships. All vessels evasive maneuvers. Open fire! The scout ships, each one 100 meters long and armed with military-grade weapons, opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and missile salvos filled the space around the approaching drones. For a moment, the weapons fire was so intense that the drones disappeared in the glare. When the light faded, all 3 drones were still there, completely undamaged. Their defensive shields hadn't even flickered. Then the drones fired back. The first scout ship simply vanished. One moment it was there, firing desperately at the approaching drone, and the next moment there was only expanding gas and debris. The second ship lasted a few seconds longer before it too was reduced to atoms. The third ship tried to turn and run, but the drone caught it easily and tore it apart with surgical precision. The entire engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. 3 warships, destroyed by what were essentially the human ship's defensive systems. Captain Vasquez's voice returned, calm and professional. Those were our point defense drones, Warlord. We have 300 of them. Our actual weapons are considerably more powerful. You now have 3 minutes to withdraw and release your prisoners. On the planet's surface, the Verdani prisoners had been watching the sky with growing hope. They couldn't understand the tactical situation, but they could see the explosions in orbit and hear the confusion in their captors' voices. Elder Nithera, still bearing the bruises from her earlier beating, dared to speak to one of the guards. What is happening in the sky? War Captain Krishanal backhanded her again, but his heart wasn't in it. He was too busy listening to the increasingly frantic radio chatter from the ships above. Shut up, Plant Eater. It's just a minor engagement. But Krishanal could hear the fear in his commander's voices. Something was going very wrong up there. Back on the Bloodfang's bridge, Caxanth tried to maintain control of the situation. His reputation was built on never backing down, never showing weakness. But the massive human ship hung in space like a judgment, its weapons trained on his fleet. All ships maintain formation, he ordered. Prepare for combat. If these humans want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget. Lieutenant Veshikar looked at him in disbelief. Sir, that ship outguns us by a factor of 50. Our weapons couldn't even scratch its shields. Then we'll board it. Caxanth roared. Prep the assault transports. Even the biggest ship can be taken if you get enough troops inside it. But before he could give the attack order, Captain Vasquez spoke again. Warlord, I'm reading energy signatures consistent with boarding pod preparation. I strongly advise against that course of action. Why? Caxanth snarled into the communicator. Afraid of a real fight? Not afraid, Warlord. Concerned for your troops. You see, our Marines are from a Class 12 death world. Your boarding pods would be entering a ship crewed by the most dangerous predators in known space. It wouldn't be a battle. It would be a slaughter. Caxanth's species had evolved on a harsh world, and they prided themselves on being fierce warriors. But Class 12 death worlds were legendary, planets so hostile that only the most adaptable and aggressive species could survive there. The humans' homeworld of Earth was rated as one of the most dangerous planets ever discovered. You have 2 minutes remaining, Captain Vasquez announced. Caxanth looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. He could see the fear in their eyes, but also the expectation. They were waiting for his decision. His entire reputation, everything he had built over decades of successful raids hung in the balance. He made his choice. All ships, battle stations. Target the human vessel and prepare to attack. Captain Vasquez's voice came through the speakers one last time, and now it carried a note of genuine sadness. I'm sorry to hear that, Warlord. You had a chance to leave peacefully. In the distance, the massive human dreadnought began to move. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the tactical display with cold professionalism. The Zephyrian Corsair fleet was moving into attack formation, their weapons charging for what they imagined would be a glorious battle. They had no idea what they were about to face. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Commander Harrison from the weapons station, "all main batteries are charged and ready. Point defense systems are online. Marines are standing by for boarding operations." Vasquez nodded. "Very well. Signal all stations, we are now at condition red. Rules of engagement are weapons free, but watch for escape pods. I want prisoners for interrogation." She opened a channel to Colonel James Rodriguez, commander of the ship's Marine contingent. "Colonel, are your people ready?" Rodriguez's scarred face appeared on her screen and his grin was not pleasant. "Ma'am, my Marines have been ready since we left Earth. We've been studying Corsair ship layouts during the trip. We know exactly where they keep their prisoners." "Good. As soon as we neutralize their combat capability, I want you to board their command ship. Intelligence suggests they have prisoners from other raids aboard." "Understood, Captain. We'll get them out." Vasquez closed the channel and turned back to the main display. The Corsair ships were spreading out, trying to surround the Retribution. It was a textbook pirate tactic. Overwhelm a single ship from multiple directions. Against most vessels it might even work, but the Retribution was not most vessels. "Captain," called out the sensor officer, "the Corsairs are opening fire." On the display, Vasquez watched as 15 pirate ships unleashed everything they had. Energy beams, missile salvos, and plasma charges filled the space around the human dreadnought. The attack was impressive by pirate standards. Enough firepower to destroy a small city. The Retribution's shields absorbed it all without even flickering. "Damage report," Vasquez requested calmly. "Shield levels at 99.8%, Captain. The enemy weapons are having no measurable impact." Vasquez nodded. She had expected as much. The Retribution's defensive systems were designed to withstand attacks from ships of equivalent size and power. The Corsair weapons were like throwing rocks at a mountain. "Return fire," she ordered. "Selective targeting. I want clean kills with minimal debris. We don't want to accidentally hit the planet." "Aye, Captain." Engaging with secondary batteries. The Retribution's response was swift and surgical. Instead of using its massive main guns, which could have vaporized the entire enemy fleet in a single salvo, it used smaller weapons designed for precision work. Even these smaller weapons were larger than the main guns on most warships. The first Corsair ship to die was the heavy cruiser Bone Render. A single beam from the Retribution's port battery struck it amidships, cutting through armor, shields, and hull like a knife through paper. The ship broke in half, its reactor containment failing in a brief flare of artificial sunlight. The second ship tried to run. The Corsair frigate Shadowfang turned away from the battle and engaged its engines at maximum power. It made it nearly 1,000 kilometers before a precision shot from the Retribution's dorsal guns turned it into expanding plasma. Warlord Caxanth watched from his flagship as his fleet died around him. Ships that had terrorized peaceful worlds for decades were being destroyed with casual ease. "The human vessel didn't even seem to be trying very hard, sir," Lieutenant Veshkar called out in panic. "The humans are targeting our engines. They're not trying to destroy us, they're trying to disable us." Caxanth realized the truth with growing horror. The humans weren't fighting for survival or even for victory. They were fighting for control. They wanted prisoners, intelligence, evidence. They were treating this like a police operation rather than a battle. "All remaining ships ramming speed," Caxanth roared into his communicator. "If we can't outfight them, we'll take them with us." 3 Corsair vessels turned toward the Retribution and engaged their engines at dangerous overload levels. Their crews knew it was suicide, but they preferred death to whatever the humans had planned for captured pirates. Captain Vasquez watched the incoming ships with interest rather than concern. "Helm, take us to port 40 degrees. Weapons disable those ships before they get within 5,000 kilometers. The Retribution's point defense systems, the same ones that had earlier destroyed 3 scout ships as a demonstration, now engaged the incoming vessels. The automated guns tracked the approaching ships with mechanical precision, calculating intercept courses and optimal targeting solutions. The first ship to die was the destroyer Death's Edge. A concentrated burst from 12-point defense turrets tore through its forward hull, causing a cascade failure that ripped the ship apart from within. The second ship, a heavy frigate called Night Terror, made it a bit closer before the defensive guns found its reactor core and triggered a controlled detonation. The third ship, a converted cargo hauler loaded with explosives, actually managed to get within 3,000 kilometers before the retribution systems destroyed it. The explosion was spectacular but harmless at that distance. In less than 10 minutes, the Zephyrian Corsair fleet had been reduced from 15 ships to 3. The survivors hung dead in space, their engines destroyed and their weapons offline. Only Caxanth's flagship, the Bloodfang, remained fully operational, but it was surrounded by targeting locks from hundreds of human weapons. Bloodfang, this is Captain Vasquez. The human's voice came through the communication system. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to destroy evidence or harm prisoners will result in your immediate destruction. Caxanth looked around his bridge at the terrified faces of his crew. His tactical officer was openly weeping, and his weapons specialist had abandoned his post entirely. The reputation he had spent decades building was gone, destroyed in minutes by a single enemy ship. But Warlord Caxanth had not survived in the pirate business by giving up easily. He still had one card to play. Human captain, he spoke into the communicator. I have a proposal for you. I will surrender my ship and crew, but I want safe passage to neutral space for myself and my senior officers. Captain Vasquez's response was immediate and cold. Negative. Unconditional surrender only. You will all face trial for your crimes. Then let me sweeten the deal, Caxanth said with a vicious smile. I have prisoners from 17 different raids aboard this ship. Slaves taken from worlds across 3 sectors. If you don't guarantee my safety, I'll space them all right now. The communication channel was silent for a long moment. Then Captain Vasquez spoke again and her voice was deadly quiet. Warlord, did you just threaten to murder prisoners? I'm offering you a trade, human. My freedom for their lives. What Caxanth didn't know was that the Retribution sensors had been scanning his ship since the moment they arrived. The humans knew exactly where the prisoners were being held, how many guards were watching them, and what weapons the guards carried. Colonel Rodriguez, Captain Vasquez spoke to her Marine commander. Are you listening to this? Yes, ma'am, Rodriguez replied, and his voice carried a barely controlled fury. My teams are already prepped for immediate insertion. Give us 30 seconds and those prisoners will be safe. You have a go, Colonel. Show these pirates what happens when they threaten innocent people. High above the planet's surface, the Retribution's marine launch bays opened with mechanical precision. Dozens of assault pods shot out from the Dreadnought, each one carrying a full squad of Earth's finest warriors. The pods were small, fast and heavily armored, designed to punch through enemy defenses and deliver their cargo directly to the target. Caxanth watched the approaching pods with growing fear. All security teams to the prisoner holds. Repel boarders. But the Corsair security teams were pirates, used to bullying helpless civilians and fighting poorly equipped resistance fighters. They had never faced professional soldiers from a Class 12 death world. The first assault pod punched through the Bloodfang's hull like a bullet through paper. The Marines inside moved with deadly efficiency, their weapons and tactics far superior to anything the pirates had ever seen. Within minutes, they had secured the first prisoner hold and were moving toward the second. Colonel Rodriguez led the assault on the ship's bridge personally. His pod breached the command deck's outer hull, and he was the first one through the breach. He found Warlord Caxanth trying to activate the ship's self-destruct sequence. The colonel's sidearm was in his hand and pointed at Caxanth's head before the pirate leader could even turn around. Step away from the console, Rodriguez ordered. Slowly. Caxanth looked at the human marine and felt fear like he had never experienced before. Rodriguez was not particularly large by human standards, but he moved with the controlled violence of a predator. His combat armor was scarred from a dozen battles, and his eyes held the cold calculation of a professional killer. You cannot stop what we have started, Caxanth tried to bluster. There are more fleets out there, more bases, more operations. Rodriguez smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Caxanth had ever seen. I know. That's why we're going to have a long talk about where to find them. All across the ship, Corsair resistance collapsed as human marines swept through the corridors. The pirates' weapons were useless against advanced human armor, and their tactics were no match for soldiers trained on the most dangerous world in the galaxy. Within an hour, the Bloodfang was secure. Over 200 prisoners from a dozen different species were freed from the ship's holding cells. Most were in poor condition, but all were alive. Captain Vasquez received the final report while standing on her bridge, looking down at the peaceful world of Kepler 442b. Colonel, what's our status? All prisoners secured, Captain. We've also recovered the ship's computer core and interrogated the senior officers. I think you're going to want to see what we found. What is it, Colonel? Rodriguez's voice was grim when he answered. Captain, this wasn't just a random raid. The Corsairs have been operating a network of slave markets and mining operations across 3 sectors. We're looking at the largest criminal organization in this part of the galaxy. Vasquez nodded slowly. Then I guess our job isn't finished yet, is it, Colonel? No, ma'am, it's not. But the good news is we now know where all their bases are. 3 weeks after the Battle of Kepler 442b, the UES Retribution hung in orbit above the former pirate stronghold of Terminus VII. The mining world had been the heart of the Zephyrian Corsair operation, where thousands of slaves had been worked to death in the deep asteroid mines. Now it was free, its orbital platforms destroyed and its slave markets reduced to radioactive craters. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the ship's main cargo bay, watching as medical teams processed the last group of rescued slaves. Men, women, and children from dozens of different species sat on temporary benches, receiving food, medical care, and the first-kind treatment many had experienced in years. Dr. Lyanna Oaksworth, the ship's chief medical officer, approached with a data pad in her hands. Captain, we've finished the final count. In total, we've rescued 4,237 individuals from 17 different species. Most are in remarkably good health considering what they've been through. Vasquez nodded, studying the diverse crowd of former slaves. How are they handling their freedom? Better than expected. Many are still in shock, but they're starting to believe they're really safe. The Verdani especially have been helpful. They've been organizing food distribution and helping translate for species that don't speak Galactic Standard. Across the cargo bay, Vasquez could see Elder Nithara moving between groups of refugees, her gentle manner and natural kindness helping to calm fears and ease trauma. The Verdani leader had recovered from her injuries and refused all offers to return to her home world until every last slave was safely delivered to their families. Captain, Colonel Rodriguez's voice came through her communication device. We've finished the interrogation of the Corsair leadership. I think you should hear this. Vasquez made her way to the ship's security section, where the captured pirates were being held. The holding cells were comfortable but secure, designed to military standards rather than the cruel cages the Corsairs had used for their victims. Warlord Caxanth sat in the largest cell, his reptilian features showing the strain of the past few weeks. When he saw Vasquez approaching, he looked up with what might have been relief. Human Captain, he said, I have been thinking about our previous conversations. Have you now? Vasquez replied. And what conclusions have you reached? You said that humans don't do things halfway. I understand now what you meant. Caxanth gestured toward the walls of his cell. Most species would have driven us away from Kepler 442b and called it a victory. You destroyed our entire organization across 3 sectors. Rodriguez stepped forward, holding a data pad with the results of their investigation. Captain, we've documented everything. The Corsairs had operations on 47 worlds, with major slave markets on 12 of them. They were selling victims to mining corporations, labor camps, and even worse operations. How many total victims? Vasquez asked. Estimated at over 50,000 individuals enslaved over the past 20 years. We've managed to rescue about 8% of them. The rest? Rodriguez's expression darkened. The rest didn't survive. Vasquez felt a cold anger building in her chest. 50,000 people stolen from their homes and families, worked to death in alien mines and factories. What about the buyers? The corporations that purchased slave labor? We have all their records, Captain. Names, locations, transaction histories. The Corsairs kept excellent books. Caxanth spoke up from his cell. Captain, I want to make a deal. You're not in a position to make deals, Warlord. But I am. You humans think you've solved the problem by destroying my fleet, but you haven't. There are other pirate groups out there. The Hegemony Reapers, the Void Stalkers, the Blood Moon Syndicate. They'll move into the territory we left behind. Vasquez studied the captured pirate leader. What are you proposing? I give you everything. Names, locations, supply routes, contact codes, all the intelligence you need to shut down every pirate operation in this sector. In exchange, I want a reduced sentence and protective custody. Rodriguez looked skeptical. Captain, we can't trust anything this animal says. But Vasquez was thinking ahead. Colonel, how long would it take us to track down all these other organizations without his help? Years, Captain. Maybe decades. These groups are careful about operational security. Caxanth nodded eagerly. Exactly. With my information, you could end piracy in this entire region within months. Think of how many lives you could save. Vasquez considered the offer. Her original mission had been to rescue the Verdani colonists, but she had discovered something much larger. The slave trade wasn't just a few pirates making opportunistic raids. It was a vast criminal network that spanned multiple star systems. I'll consider your offer, Warlord. But understand this. If even one piece of your information proves false, the deal is off. Meanwhile, in the ship's main conference room, a very different kind of negotiation was taking place. Ambassador Veltar of the Centauri Union had arrived aboard a diplomatic vessel, along with representatives from 6 other species. They sat around the table looking uncomfortable and out of place on the human warship. Ambassador Veltar activated his translator and spoke carefully. Captain Vasquez, the Galactic Cooperative Council has asked me to express their concerns about recent human activities. Vasquez took her seat at the head of the table. What concerns might those be, Ambassador? The complete destruction of the Zephyrian Corsair organization has created a power vacuum in 3 sectors. There are reports of other criminal groups moving to fill the gap. Some species feel that your actions may have made the situation worse. Vasquez's expression remained neutral. Ambassador, are you suggesting we should have left the Corsairs in place? Not exactly, but perhaps a more measured response would have been appropriate. Drive them away from specific targets rather than completely eliminating them. Dr. Oaksworth, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Ambassador, how many members of your species have been enslaved by pirates in the past year? Veltar's blue skin flushed darker. That is not the point, Doctor. The issue is, it is exactly the point, Oaksworth interrupted. You're asking us to leave criminals in place so they can continue enslaving people, just at a level you consider manageable. Another ambassador, this one from the hegemony of worlds, spoke up. The concern is about proportional response. Sending a dreadnought to deal with a minor piracy issue sets a dangerous precedent. Vasquez leaned forward. Let me make something clear to all of you. When innocent people call for help, humanity responds with everything we have. We don't send proportional force, we send overwhelming force. We don't solve problems temporarily. We solve them permanently. But Captain, Veltar protested, such aggressive actions make other species nervous. There are concerns about human military expansion. Then those species have nothing to worry about as long as they don't prey on innocent people. Vasquez's voice was cold. Ambassador, we didn't start this conflict. We finished it. The meeting continued for another hour, with various ambassadors expressing concerns about human military doctrine, the implications of unilateral action, and the need for diplomatic solutions to piracy. Vasquez listened politely but made no commitments to change her approach. When the ambassadors finally left, she found Colonel Rodriguez waiting for her in the corridor. How did it go, Captain? About as expected. They want us to fight just hard enough to look like we're trying, but not hard enough to actually solve the problem. Rodriguez nodded grimly. And our response? Vasquez looked out through a nearby viewport at the former slave world of Terminus 7. Reconstruction. Crews were already working to convert the mining facilities into proper settlements. For the freed slaves who chose to stay, our response, Colonel, is to do what we always do. We're going to use Caxanth's information to track down every pirate group in this sector. We're going to shut down every slave market, destroy every illegal operation, and make sure this never happens again. The aliens won't like it. The aliens don't have to like it. They just have to accept it. 6 months later, the pirate threat in the outer spiral had been completely eliminated. The UES Retribution, along with 3 other human warships, had systematically hunted down and destroyed every criminal organization that dealt in slavery. The former pirate territories were now patrolled by human vessels, with the simple message broadcast on all frequencies: Earth protects. On Kepler 442b, Elder Nathara stood in the same spot where she had first seen the Corsair ships descending from the sky. Now she watched as human cargo ships delivered agricultural equipment, medical supplies, and defensive systems to her people. The Verdani had learned that evil existed in the galaxy, but they had also learned that good existed too. sometimes in 5-kilometer-long packages with enough firepower to level planets. The memorial they erected was simple, a single stone marker with text in both Verdani script and human English. It read, "To those who came from afar to help strangers, to those who do not do small aid, to those who sent dreadnoughts." In the final analysis, the galaxy had learned something important about humanity. When humans said they would help, they meant it completely. When they promised to solve a problem, they solved all of it. And when they decided to protect innocent people, they did it with everything they had. The pirates were gone. The slaves were free. And across the galaxy, the word spread, Earth protects, because that was what humans did.